All right, good morning, everyone. My name is George Whittier. I'm the CEO of Fairbanks Morse Defense, and it's my honor to introduce this panel. Admiral Kilby, hello, good morning. The Chinese proverb, may we live in interesting times. I don't know if that fits any time better than it does today, and I am sure for this audience that we won't have any questions at all for these congressmen up here today based on any of the current activities that are going on in the world today. The panel is talking about building readiness, and we think about entering the Davidson Window. There's a couple of things that we can do. Obviously, how do we get more ships into the fleet? I think the best way to do that is by improving our maintenance standards, getting more ships out of the maintenance availabilities faster so that we can get them delivered to the fleet sooner. With that being said, it's my honor to introduce Bryan Clark, our moderator, Senior Vice President at the Hudson Institute. And if all of you look on your chairs, hopefully you have a sticker that says, Go Navy, beat China, courtesy of Fairbanks Morse Defense. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, George.
All right, thank you, George. Appreciate that. And so thank you all for being here. We're really excited to have this discussion this morning. It's, as George said, interesting times for a discussion with Congress members about what's happening both on the Hill and in the military services, our sea services. So with us today, we have Congressman Trent Kelly from Mississippi. We have Congresswoman Jen Kiggins from Virginia, and then Congressman Rob Whitman, also from Virginia. So thank you all for being here today.
Thanks, Brian.
Also, Congressman Norcross, who is not with us today, is ill, so our thoughts go out to him, and hopefully he's going to feel better soon. But let's jump right into it. So I wanted to ask each of you, the new administration has made shipbuilding, obviously the maritime service is a pretty prominent part of its agenda. And there's been some efforts going on to try to ramp up shipbuilding. Obviously, Ships for America Act is probably pending, coming back into the scrum, if you will. So do you think that the priorities the administration has established are the right ones? Are there other things we need to be raising the profile of in the maritime or the sea services? And how does Congress help drive that?
Sure.
So. Do you want to start, Rob?
Well, listen, I think that the speech that you just heard from Secretary of the Navy and what he reiterated from the President's direction to him was shipbuilding, shipbuilding, shipbuilding. Right. I love it. But the key is you have to get left to that enterprise. And being to the left of the enterprise means if you're going to do shipbuilding, 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 it starts with workforce, workforce, workforce. That's where it has to start. And there's an opportunity right now for us to front load money to make that happen. Here's where we are today. If you look at the salary differential between shipyard skilled tradesmen and folks in other areas of the private sector, it used to be a factor of 4. So you would make 4 times the amount in a shipyard as you would in other comparable jobs. Today, as we speak, that ratio has gone down to 1.2. So I live in an area where people would get on a bus at 3 o'clock in the morning, travel 2 hours to go to the shipyard to go to work. I mean, a full bus load of people. Today, not the case. If we are going to make sure that we have the workforce necessary to execute, as the Secretary said, shipbuilding, 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 we have to make sure we get those salaries back to where they need to be. How do we do that? The Shipyard Accountability Workforce Support Act, better known as SAWS. SAWS helps us do that. I've spoken with the OMB director, Vogt. I want to make sure all others there, the Secretary has indicated an interest in that. I think SAWS is one of the key elements to be able to take money that's already in a contract, take it from the end of the contract and move it forward to make sure we have the ability to attract that workforce. That's going to be the key. All the other things are going to be foundation upon having the workforce for the future. And listen, Congress can do that, but I can tell you by the time the Congress gets through NDAA, appropriations, it gets in the hands of the Pentagon, that's a 24-month window. Today it could happen immediately by OMB allowing in those contracts for that money to be moved to the left.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So Congressman Kiggins, I'll turn to you. So what do you think about the administration's priorities? And I mean, I'll just say, it seems like naval aviation, which is a big challenge right now, is not really high on the list. I think that may be.
Well, yes, and happy to speak a lot to naval aviation. On the shipbuilding side, I'll say how exciting it was just to be in the room for the State of the Union when the President said we were going to have an Office of Shipbuilding, and to see that top-down focus on shipbuilding. I mean, Rob's right. We don't have enough ships. We know that China's racing past 400, and we hover just below 300, and we have the same number of ships we had in 2003. And I did not know, the Secretary of the Navy said in the last one that China has made more ships this past year than our country has made since World War II. These are shocking statistics. Everyone needs to be paying attention, but the fact that the president has stated that this is his priority is great news. We're hoping to expand that conversation to, yes, naval aviation as well. We need the best and latest and greatest technology we can get out there. I represent the East Coast Master Jet Base at Naval Air Station Oceana. We'll kick and scream every single day about the need for next generation strike fighter, preferably F-35 over at that base. We know that money follows the new toys. A lot of room for improvement with infrastructure. So we need to keep pushing for that as well. But we have to take care of the people. Rob is right about the workforce side. And we had some good discussions last year in last Congress about quality of life issues, but we left out in Military Sea Lift Command, we left out our ship repair, shipyard workers, but really comes down to the pay piece. I mean, that statistic is shocking about the pay increases compared to the rest of comparable jobs, but we need to pay those guys more. That's really what it comes down to. So Congress's job is to put our money where our mouth is, but there's a lot of room for improvement.
Chairman Kelly?
Yeah, I think that pay piece is Mr. Whitman stole my thunder, which he does often. I see General Reed out there who brought this up the other day. Thank you for the great job that you're doing. But I think that's it. But I think part of that is not just the pay. It's easy to say that, but you've got to have a mindset change. And my dad had a high school education, but he said we do well what we measure. And we're not measuring the right things right now. So if you're not asking the right questions or you're not measuring the right things, you're going to get the wrong answer every single time. And a lot of that has to do with consistency of demand to the commercial industry. So I can say, hey, hire more workers and pay them more. But when I tell you, we may build 3 ships next year. No, that's going to be 1. No, the next year is going to be 0, and then we're going to build 1 in the off year. And oh, by the way, it's going to be the same one that we paused the line on. You guys, it doesn't matter how much you pay those guys. You can't build a workforce to support that. Yeah. So we've got to have consistency. We've got to do a better job of building things that are commercial and adapting those to military use and vice versa. We don't need to lose the lessons that we've learned in the industrial base. We need to use those whether we're building commercial ships. 80% of the things are going to be the same as a military ship. And so why are we redoing that? Why are we redesigning the things that we already know that work? Right. And so we've got to build America, but we've got to invest in the entire industrial base. You guys as shipbuilders cannot invest in an industrial base, a capital investment, if you don't have a consistent demand. You can't pay workers. You can't make infrastructure investments. You can't do any of that. So what we did, and I just spoke with the Secretary of the Navy, and it's something I've been harping on for years, we haven't had a 30-year ship plan in so long, I can't even remember when the last one was. They may give us a multiple choice option, which is not a ship plan. We need to have a 30-year ship plan. We need to decide that the first 5, 7, 10 years, whatever that number is, whatever the administration, they need to say the first 5 years are going to be constant and that demand is not going to change. We will adapt the out years based on what we do in the 5 years, but year 2 next year will be year 1 of the next 5-year plan. So we cannot keep changing the message that we send to the commercial industrial base and expect them to hire a workforce or make infrastructure investments. Yeah.
That's a great point, Congressman Kelly. So, Congressman Whitman, to you, I wanted to go off script a little bit here, but to say that one of the challenges the Navy has in terms of growing the fleet is just the cost to operate and sustain and support it. Yeah. So one of the reasons why the fleet doesn't get bigger is because we can't afford to keep it, right. Even if we can afford to build it. How do we manage those costs such that we can grow the fleet? Do we have to build different ships that have different personnel requirements and maybe are easier to maintain? What's the path there?
Well, there are actually 2 elements to that. First of all is to be able to build capability and capacity. You have to not only look at exquisite platforms, our Virginia class, Ford class, Arleigh Burkes. Those are incredible ships, and we need to keep building them, as Trent said, on pace. And Trent's done a great job as chairman of Sea Power to make sure there's laser focus on that in everything that the subcommittee does. You have to be able to do that, but you also have to be able to build attritables and expendables. You have to have the full suite of capabilities there, and you can build attritables and expendables very fast, bring them to scale, that now augment and supplement the fleet with the exquisite platforms, and all of a sudden, the risk calculus for the Chinese get very, very complicated, and especially since this is an away game. So how do you operationalize an away game? You know, you're going to fight with what you've got when the balloon goes up. And how much of that stuff can you move in theater? Let me tell you, you get a lot of this stuff inside the first island chain that really makes China say, well, maybe not today. Right. The other element too, and Trent hit on this, and that is, as we look at what happens with workforce, we think about the enterprise of building and maintaining a Navy, our constitutional responsibility. We look at that in buckets, and we shouldn't, because the workforce skills are the same. If you're a ship maintainer or a ship builder, the workforce skills are the same. So why don't we integrate the whole enterprise and go, you know what? When we have the sand charts that show the ship repair yards, have lots of ships in the yard, and then all of a sudden next year you look at it and go, where'd all the ships go? And the companies are saying, we got to lay off workers. Why aren't they building panels for submarines? Why aren't they building ship sets for aircraft carriers? Why don't we fully load those industries, and they ought to be interrelated? Because what happens too is when ship maintainers say, hey, I'm going to go over to the shipbuilding side, we shouldn't have that. One side shouldn't be cannibalizing from the others. We should be building that as one integrated effort. Ship maintenance and shipbuilding should be all part of one, and also how it happens on our public yards. We've got to, through PSYOPs, invest in our public yards. As Jen will tell you, if you want to go to a World War II museum on ship maintenance, you go to Norfolk Naval Shipyard. I mean, it's wonderful the people that work there, but you're trying to attract a workforce today and having them work in a place that's 70 years old as far as its technology. So we have to be able to do that. You have to integrate public and private side in shipbuilding. We have to make sure too that some of the work that's done in the public yards right now, to allow them to actually modernize, some of that's got to shift over to the private yards to do that. There cannot be any separation between ship maintenance and shipbuilding.
Great point. So Representative Kiggins, ship repair is something that's in your district as well, I think, right? So these companies are having a very difficult time, partly because of the reason Congressman Whitman brought up about just an uneven demand signal, but also because of the way the government manages the ship repair process and the contracting associated with it, and just very much a feast or famine kind of model. How do we get through that, and how do we take advantage of their capacity to do shipbuilding? I mean, do we have to change how we design the ships in order to take advantage of that capacity? Yeah,
well, Trent was right about the consistent funding piece too. I think that's an important element and why we see them continuing to struggle. But we need to do better. And some of our ship repair industry is focused now on modular build and helping on the shipbuilding side. We have to think outside the box, and we can do that by having them build components and pieces, and in Hampton Roads it's nice because we can ship it down the river over to Huntington Ingalls. They can kind of like Lego assembly the parts of the aircraft carrier. But how are we utilizing the center of the country too? We need more ships faster, and historically we're building and repairing ships on the coastline. There's a lot of country in between. There's a lot of workforce in between and skilled trades, and it's always comes down to that workforce issue. But we need to think outside the box. We need to be thinking about modular building in the middle parts of the country and then shipping it to the coastline. How are we using our allied partners? What does that supply chain piece look like? I think there's room to expand the discussion because there's other countries that can do this cheaper and quicker. And right now, I need my friends. We continue to need our friends now more than ever. So what does that look like? How are we incentivizing our allied partners to come to this country, reopen shipyards? What are we able to do overseas? To make sure we can get these ships built faster. But it really all still comes down to people. I mean, taking care of the people, the funding piece. But I think of the Quality of Life panel that we did on Armed Services Committee last year on the active duty side. And we looked at really 5 things. It was pay and compensation, number 1, then housing, childcare, healthcare, spouse employment. But we left the industry people out of the picture. We left the Military Sea Lift Command, our CIVMAR people out of the picture. So we need to expand this because we can't do any of these things without the people.
Right. So Chairman Kelly, we talked about you talked about the ability of us to adapt commercial designs for military purposes, and also the ability to do modular construction and maybe take advantage of foreign shipbuilders. Should we be rethinking, kind of the designs that we're building ships to, or can we modularize existing ship designs to be able to take advantage of this other capacity, whether it's allied capacity or capacity in the ship repair yards?
I think you can modulate. You can make it modular.
Right.
Y'all have to excuse me. I'm from the South, man. You can make it modular to about 80 to 85% of that. And then you've got the low density stuff that is going to be one-offs and specific. Right. But I think you've got to use, like, we're not using the technology we have. I was just at the BMW factory, which has nothing to do with ships, by the way, but the BMW factory in Munich. And they have machines and robots and things that are doing it. They still have one-for-one workers that they had. But they're sitting behind a screen and they're doing quality assurance, they're adjusting, they're making sure that all the things are happening. So we've got to use the technology to build things faster, more ergonomically, but to still keep those good paying jobs. So we got to work with unions to make sure that those guys know we're not taking jobs away, we're making cleaner, higher paying, better jobs to do the same thing. We can be more modular for the things that matter, and then we can have those parts, and like Jen said, we can do that all across the nation. All those things don't have to be built on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, as opposed to Virginia. We will take those, but we can do that on the 85%, and then we need to use things like AI. We need to have predictable maintenance. We know when things are going to break. We have the data, we have the history, so why do we not have those things plugged in, and why are we not asking the right questions to the AI models to say, when is this not in the 85% piece of thing going to break? And how many of the things that are modular do we need to have to make sure that we don't have a wait time, that we have a ship sitting in dry dock that we can't fix because we're waiting on a part? We've got to get better at maintenance and doing that. And the same thing with construction. A lot of times we have to build parts of ships because you have to know which parts, the old PERT models, right? And so we've got to get better, and AI, I think, can help us do that if we put the right inputs in.
So to pull the string on that a little bit, so the Navy has pursued some commercial-derived ships in the past. So the Expeditionary Sea Base, Expeditionary Docking Platform, but has been retiring those because they find that whatever, they don't like them. So do we need to kind of revisit that idea that we can take advantage of more modular designs that are available that the Navy maybe in past years would not have favored using, but now because we need the capacity, we need to rethink and reapproach that?
We do. We need to get consistent in the demand. And listen, we're better with an 85% fleet that is 100% operable. I mean, maintenance, and listen, we need to use private shipyards to do repairs when the public shipyards are full. We don't need to have a private dry dock sitting there that we fail to use that could do the job, but we won't because it has to go here. We just have to get better of merging the private and military partnerships and making sure that, like Rob said, we don't need a worker being laid off and not having a job when they can go to a private dock right there and maybe work on something that's a little bit different but in the same scheme. So we have to get more modular, absolutely.
So, Congressman Whitman, you also chair the TAC Air Land Subcommittee.
Yes.
And we did talk about naval aviation. I wanted to get your thoughts on, and also Congresswoman Kiggin's thought on, where we need to go with regard to the naval, the carrier air wing, right? Because right now it seems like that's the most kind of open-ended part of the naval fleet architecture. And where are we going with having to fill the strike fighter shortfall, and how do we accelerate the next generation?
Well, listen, the Carrier Strike Group is still the cornerstone of being able to project force around the world. It will continue to be. What we have to do is to figure out how do we do more to enable that. We know that we've come to the end of the line on the FA-18 production, but we're also on the precipice of FA-XX, which will be the next generation aircraft carrier-based aircraft, as well as NGAD. So both of those will be filling in that necessary place in capability between now and when those future platforms are put in place. We also have F-35C, the Charlie version that will be carrier-based. So the Navy is going to make its way through this period of time, and it's been there before. We've had multiple aircraft assuming those roles. The key is to make sure that we have no hiccups there. Right. And the challenge has been is making sure that we keep the F-18s operational, especially the Super Hornets, making sure we keep them operational. The operational availability is an issue across the board. Right. it's not just with aircraft. When you go to the depots and you see aircraft that are backed up and you see the deep dive maintenance we have to do, remember these aircraft operate in the most acerbic environment that you could imagine with salt water. They are really taking it on the chin. So it takes more to go ahead and keep those jets maintained. But what we also have to look at too is what are we doing with other elements of that? We also have F-35 Bravos on board large deck amphibs. But it's great to have those aircraft, but when you look at amphibious ships and you look at the A-sub-O on amphibious ships and it's at 41%, and today with the Marine Corps being the crisis response force for us to respond around the world, and you look today and if the call goes out today and said, hey, listen, we need an ARGMU, guess what? They're not getting an ARGMU. Because you can't put together an ARGMU. You can send one ship, but you can't send the 3-ship group that you need to with an ARGMU. So it's not just the aircraft, but it's making sure we're doing everything too with the carriers there. We see MQ-25 coming on board. That allows some flexibility for the carriers to operate at distance. All these enablers are going to be key going forward, as well as maintaining current F-18s, making sure too that we understand how we predict maintenance there in that really hostile environment of salt water. And then where are we with delivering F-35Cs on time? As Jen said too, you know, those jets don't spend all their time at sea. They spend a lot of time at master jet bases with pilots training and staying certified. And boy, if you go to Oceana today, and I know Jen's going to get the Secretary of the Navy there, you go to Oceana today and you shake your head and go, what the, why aren't we, you know, doing what's necessary there, and especially with the new wave of aircraft that are coming, with 35Cs coming, with NGAD, with FAXX. I mean, these facilities are going to be more important than ever. So I would say it's the entire tail. It's the ships those aircraft operate on. It's maintaining the ones we have. It's making sure we deliver the ones coming into inventory on time. And most importantly is you have to make sure places like Oceana are maintained and they have the depot maintenance or maintenance capability to make sure these jets have operational availability.
So Representative Kiggins, in addition to what Congressman Whitman just talked about, but also what's the role of unmanned going to need to be in the future carrier wing, and how does is Congress willing to spend the kind of money needed to get people the flight hours, you know, to get up to where they need to be proficient? I mean, not just the bare minimum, but you know, get up to, you know, more into the double digits in terms of flight hours per month to be proficient operators.
Yeah, they better be. I mean, when we turn on the news and we see that, you know, we're bombing the Houthis in Yemen, you know, what do they show on the television? They show the F-18s taking off our aircraft carriers. And my husband flew F-18, so I always get very jealous because I know there's a helicopter over on starboard D, you know, waiting to pick up the F-18 guys if they have to pop out. So, but I mean, that's tip of the spear, right? What happened after October 7th in Israel? We sent the Ford and the Eisenhower. We sent carrier air wings from the East Coast. Yep. And right now, there's a lot of focus on the West Coast. I get it, and the fight with China, you know, and the focus on the Pacific. So I am appreciative that we have got great, you know, we've stood up F-35 squadrons at Naval Air Station Lemoore, which is the West Coast master jet base. But I will kick and scream as long as I have the privilege of sitting in this job, and I represent that East Coast master jet base. And that's where I grew up as a Navy pilot, and my family, and I've got a son who just selected jets a couple weeks ago. So, you know, I care about that. The families in my district who live on that base, and that base needs some help. So I'm very excited about new leadership, the change of administration, but we've got to focus on that East Coast master jet base. And I love, you know, the discussions of FAXX and NGAD and whatnot, but the F-35 is here. I've got it. The Air Force is using it. We got to get them off the flight line, you know, out of Dallas. But to get them in place, our allied partners are using them. So when you talk about what that looks like for parts and pieces, you know, as we send these guys on missions across the globe, but we need that piece. And you asked about the unmanned component. I mean, that integration, that we got to start integrating but practicing. I know that F-18 is here. It's a tried and true platform, but I know their tactics. I mean, they're struggling to keep up with Chinese tactics, and so how can I complement that? Is the complement unmanned? You know, how are we integrating F-35s? I hope too. But it's a work in progress. You can't just snap your fingers and all of a sudden the pilots know what they're doing. And when you debrief with the guys that have been in the Red Sea and those air wings and listen to them, listen to their challenges and their struggles with that unmanned integration, because there was a lot of activity, a lot of allied partners that we were trying to coordinate with. We need to be practicing those tactics, those scenarios, so that when push comes to shove, you know, we're ready to go.
Right, so we need to put the money into the flight hour program.
100%. I mean, there's, yeah, as long as I have the privilege of being in this job, and I know, working with Rob, he lets me go to tactical. I don't even sit on tactical air and land committee, but I show up at all the meetings just because to kick and scream about this issue. But it's all about, practicing and just making sure our pilots are current and up to date and keeping them in the cockpit. I mean, it's we can talk, another time about just that pipeline of how we're training our Navy pilots, what that looks like for proficiency. But if we don't keep these guys in the air, keep them sharp on their tactics and their skills, then when push comes to shove, we need to be ready to fight tonight, as the saying goes. So, and I think that our Navy pilots, especially I can speak to that, are ready to fight tonight. But let's keep them in that good place and give them what they need.
Right. So Chairman Kelly, we talked about unmanned in the carrier air wing and unmanned in the aviation in general. The Navy's been very slow to bring out uncrewed systems in the surface fleet in particular. It's been part of kind of the submarine force, I guess, for a while. So what do you think the holdup is, or at least how does Congress help to drive that push to bring more uncrewed surface vessels into the fleet, into the field? I know Admiral Paparo has been screaming for this for a while.
I think that's number one. He's screaming for that. I think it's just a product of doing the things the way that we've always done them. I think that's what's wrong with our acquisition system, and the reason it's broken is because we've always done it this way, so we need to keep. It takes just looking and focusing on doing that. And I also think it's not an either or. I don't think it's a manned or unmanned platform. I think some can be both, depending on the mission and depending on what you do. I don't think it's an either-or proposal, and I think we as industry and we as Congress need to think there are some platforms that can be both, can be either depending on the mission. So we absolutely have to focus there. There's an appetite to do that. Admiral Papara is a large proponent, but we've talked about it for years and years and years in the Navy. The Navy has talked about it, but they've taken no actions to actually do that. And so what you've got to do is force their feet to the fire and say, you will do this. We know it's cheaper, it puts less people at risk, but it still takes people to fly those things. Right. So it's just going to be a matter of the administration and of Congress saying, we're not going to do it the same old way. It's a new strategic theater that we operate in, and we've got to operate differently, because if we operate the same way that we've always operated, we're not going to get the massive equities that we need. So we've just got to say, we are going to go to more unmanned systems, but I really challenge everybody in the industry and everywhere. It's not an either or proposal. We can do both.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, and you talked about the acquisition programs or process. So one of the big poster children for acquisition gone awry has been the Constellation frigate program. Where do you see that program needing to go to be able to, does the Navy need to cut bait here and decide to focus its attention on the platforms it's already got in production? Or should it be emphasizing, let's get the frigate program squared away and bring it out and accelerate it?
I think you can do both. I think, the last couple of years we've looked at, let's retire 6 ships, and let's retire 18 ships and build 6. Well, that's not a model for getting us where to be. We've got to use what we have. We have to be prepared today to fight with what we have. So you can never just retire stuff unless you're replacing. We have to be more agile and more mobile. And then we can't do the Pentagon Wars thing. We can't say we need and everybody should watch that when they made the Bradley. This thing's supposed to be a low visibility platform that is quiet, that is wheeled, that sneaks up and watches people, and it winds up as an infantry fighting vehicle. We can't do that with ships. There's some good ideas that you can do, but you're better off violently executing to build 85% of the ship that you want, rather than having 0% because either the old ones are too old to work anymore or the new ones are 10 years away in production. What we have to do is get a good idea, do it quickly, and then we have to invest in that and build it. And understand, if you need something to fill that capability gap, you can build something to build that capability gap, or either you can accept the risk of having 85%, but you understand that risk, but still that 85% is better than 0% any day. And so we just have to really get just more agile, and then when we do something, we can't keep making the changes which drive up costs, drive up time, and sometimes wind up having not even a product at the end of it.
Right. So Congressman Whitman, so do we think the Navy might be going down this road on FAXX, or do you think that this philosophy of let's get the 85% solution, is that something we need to be applying across the board?
I think what we have to look at is making sure that we are very mindful of the lessons of the past. I mean, look at LCS and what that turned into be, 2 hull forms, and now all of a sudden retiring a lot of those early. The question is why? Constellation's another question. We are at a tipping point with Constellation. It started out saying we're going to take the FREM concept, 85% complete, we'll add our 15% to it, then we'll go right to construction. We look right now, over cost, over budget, because that is reversed. Now it's 15% the original design, 85% add-ons. The question then becomes, for that class, for that frigate class, and I am fully in favor of having a frigate class of ships, the question is are we at a point where we either quickly recover and get back on track with this, get back to schedule, get back to budget? I don't know that you can make up schedule. Or do you say, maybe we're too far along with this, we go in a different direction? The Navy's going to have to ask that question now. It can't push it off in the future. Same question that should have been asked with LCS years and years ago. On FAXX, I think the same thing. I think that concept needs to be really fully looked at as far as where's F-35 going to take you in the carrier air wing? Where is NGAD going to take you on the carrier air wing? Because remember, we are not going to have that many NGADs. It is going to be for a very, very specific purpose. So the question is what is your interim? What is your interim aircraft for a carrier strike group to make sure that you have the ability to operate now at distance, and where you can add that to an MQ-25, an unmanned system, to be able to do those things? I think Navy's asking the right questions there and looking at the proposals they get on FAXX and saying, this is our true carrier-based aircraft that's going to do the things that are necessary, that's going to come in at a time point and a price point that's going to be to the left of NGAD, which is what the Navy's really going to need to make sure they have the full complement. Because remember, today the challenge is how do you fully operationalize all of the air wings for 11 carriers?
Right.
And and you got to have, I think you have to have 10 of those. They've always talked about going down. I think you have to have 10 of those. The challenge today is that with the aircraft we have on hand today, everyone, even if you maintain them, and with F-35s coming online, you can't make that number. So anyway, so we have to look at those other elements.
Right. So there's got to be alternatives to be able to flesh out that carrier air wing. So one last question on aviation, but to Representative Kiggin. So on the non-carrier side, naval aviation, we've got P-8s that are being run through the ringer, right? We're burning through their flight hours very quickly, and we might find ourselves either having to re-wing them or replace them earlier than we originally had planned. And then you've got a variety of other aircraft, the E-6s and some other aircraft that are out there. So does the Navy need to think about that future land-based component of naval aviation differently in an environment where it's going to be very contested? The land bases you're going to operate from are going to be probably very far away from the scene of the action, and think about different approaches to being able to address those kinds of maritime patrol missions or long-range communication missions that we've traditionally relied on pretty vulnerable commercially derived aircraft to do.
Yeah, I mean, we need those guys too. They're doing important missions, especially in Southeast Asia right now. We had the opportunity to go up in a P-8 with a P-8 crew. It's always impressive to me how young our pilots and air crew are. But they're talking to the Chinese. I mean, you hear the Chinese broken English saying, you're violating Chinese airspace, and then our pilots have to say, no, we're not. We're in international airspace. But they are doing tip of the spear work. I need them too, and I know the Air Force isn't here and is underrepresented, but they're our partners in a lot of those, the land-based missions we're doing. So we need that across the board. So being protective of all of naval aviation, the rotary wing side, I was 46s and H-3s, those aircraft, legacy aircraft went away, and now we've kind of moved into 60s, but it's nice to have that consistency. We share that airframe with the Army. So when you talk about just maintenance and parts, availability of parts and whatnot, I think as much as we can integrate and share, that's why the F-35 is so attractive right now, because so many of our allied partners fly them, the Air Force flies them, the Marine Corps flies them. It's just the Navy. I just need a little more from the Navy. I need that commitment, again, from the top down, that we're putting them on the East Coast. I'll kick and scream until somebody pays attention and is like, shut that lady up. And I look at, again, the East Coast Master Jet Base, which that's it. Again, East and West Coast. So I need those guys, and I look at the 6 hangar doors that don't close. I hear the mold complaints from the air wing that returns from deployment and has their ceiling, covered in mold, the lead-based paint that is now chipping, and we've got the chief in the building, on 3 inhalers because of his respiratory problem. I can't have those things on that base. I think of the bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, kids that get winged and how excited they are to fly the latest in generation, to go do that mission, that tip of the spear mission. And I think what they're going to come to, and I need to do better. I need the Navy's commitment that we're going to actually invest in that people side, in the people side of the house, because we can't do any of these roles and these missions. And I love talking about FAX and the NGAD and whatnot, but what I have right now are a lot of aging F-18 squadrons with no plans to put F-35 squadrons on the East Coast Master Jet Base, and a lot of kids who care about this country, who love this country, who I want to provide for, to make sure that when we need them, when we need to send them to wherever it is to fight the terrorists, to drop bombs on the bad guys, that they have what they need. So that's our job here in Congress, and I know we're dedicated to it. And again, I'm excited for the new leadership. We can get there. Just wanted to add too about the 85% discussion, and I think my colleagues did a good job of mentioning that the consistency in planning is very frustrating. We keep changing our minds. The LCS is a good example. The Constellation Frigate class is a good example. But even the decommissioning of ships, it's frustrating to me. I don't have enough ships right now in my Navy, and so I want every single ship. So when we talk about, I wanted to tour the Philippine Sea. It didn't look great, but you can't go on a tour. It's deploying. Well, how about when it comes back? No, we're decommissioning it when it gets back. Don't decommission that ship. It just got back from deployment. Nimitz class, or the Nimitz, too. We just got an extension for that. If an aircraft carrier can go on deployment and come back, keep the ship, unless it's sinking or leaking. I need that ship right now. But we need some consistency in that manner. I need the Navy, again, to come out and say, I want every ship I have. We're keeping our older ships, every single one of them. Now is not the time to be decommissioning ships that we just sent on deployment. So just to get off my plate.
Good point. I mean, so it's a good point. So I was going to bring that up with Chairman Kelly. So do we need to, given the urgency of the potential threat, right? The fact that we're worried about China gets sassy in the next couple of years and decides to do something about Taiwan, do we need to think about maybe reallocating funding away from building new and towards keeping existing ships at a higher state of readiness, or do we try to get more money to do both? And is this something that the White House Shipbuilding Office should be looking at? It's not just a matter of shipbuilding, it's also ship repair and ship readiness.
I think you can do both, and I think you have to do both. I agree with Jen. We should not retire a ship, any ship, if we don't have a replacement. Because that crew, as long as you can keep that operational and invest in what it takes to keep it operational and keep it in service, and you train those crews, they still are going to have at least 85% of the capacity that something newer would have. And if they're well trained, they can make up for that gap, that 15. If they understand what they can't do, you can have other systems or platform, whether that's unmanned, whether that's putting a submarine that maybe wasn't going to be there, maybe it's putting an extra destroyer there to make up for some of the capacity or capabilities they don't have. But we still have to have that 85%, and they have to be trained. So we have to keep what we have running. We can't retire stuff. And I'll tell you, I've seen this, Rob may not have, Chairman Whitman may not have, but a lot of times when we tell the Navy you're not retiring a ship, the answer is we'll just make sure it's broke and we'll just say it didn't work and see we told you so. Yeah. There is no effort to actually make that piece of equipment work. It's we don't want to do it and we're going to ignore what you say, Congress. We're going to ignore what you say, President. We're just going to make sure that it doesn't work. We have got to be committed to making sure that everything that we have can be operational at a moment's notice, and that we keep them operational, and that we keep training those crews. We have an amphib go down. Yeah. Guess what? That means our Marines can't train on that amphib if it's not in service, so they can't do their primary mission. If we have carriers go down, I think it was you, Chairman Whitman, the other day on the floor that mentioned, with the Houthis that we just had, if we did not have a carrier there, what land-based aircraft can we put there? Yeah. Do we have enough? But because we have a carrier, we have the capacity to make those strikes. Yeah. So it's not just, a lot of people are saying, man, we need to get rid of all the carriers or we need to have less carriers. No, we don't. We still need that that air platform in the Navy that can have our jets take off and deliver power wherever we need, including soft power sometimes. Exactly. And so, absolutely, we need to do both. I think the reconciliation reconciliation in a lot of things. We've got AUKUS that is invested in our industrial shipbuilding base. This reconciliation, I think a lot of that is going to be investing. So I think you can do both. I think you use those for industrial base and new things. I think we use the NDAA and the normal budget to make sure that the platforms we have now are operational, working, and that our troops, I say troops, our service members are allowed to practice and train on those platforms.
Great place to end it there, Chairman Kelly, because I know we're running out of time, and you have a HASC hearing coming up. But are there any last words before we take off, Congressman Whitman?
Just that I will close with the words of the immortal Jerry Reed. We have a long ways to go and a short time to get there.
Thank you.
I just want to thank the guys out there for what you do every day, whether you're wearing a uniform or building ships or whatever you do. You guys have good ideas too, and please don't hesitate to get these members of the panel and the PIMBR. And if y'all will, just keep Don Norcross and his family in your prayers. We wish him a healthy recovery and hope that he's back soon.
And I just want to put in a plug too for how we're filling gaps in the Navy, because we don't have enough ships right now, and we have the military Sea Lift Command side, and those people need to be included in the discussion, our civilian mariners. We've had to sideline 17 of those ships right now because we don't have the people, the workforce. That's again on the civilian side. We went from 8 AOEs in the Navy down to 2. These are the supply ships that bring the fuel, the supply, the bombs, the bullets, the food to our deployed ships. So I need those guys. I need these civilian mariners. What are we doing to expand some of our quality of life, quality of service discussions to our civilian mariners who right now are filling a lot of the gaps? And we need to expand those discussions to shipyard and shipbuilders too. So there's a lot of work to be done, but we're a collective team. So thank you, to each and every one of you in this room, especially to those who are wearing a uniform. We have your backs, and just looking forward to getting this done together. But thank you for all you do.
Well, I'll also echo the thanks of the panel here, to everybody in the audience here. Thank you for what you do, incredible work. And also, don't hesitate to let us know what your thoughts are, your ideas on, because I tell folks the solutions to the challenges we face don't rest inside that 60 square miles of fantasy land we call Washington. It's right here in this room. So keep us plugged in, and we're going to do our best to make sure we get where we need to be.
Thank you very much, Congressman Rob Whitman, Congresswoman Jen Kiggins, and then Chairman Trent Kelly. Thank you very much for being here today, and thank you all for coming. Have a great day.
Thank you, folks.